Thanks a lot for logging on. Obviously, the fact you're here means that you're people who are interested in your organisation making some progress and making improvements. This obviously means that you're actually interested, and that is a very good start because funders can tell if you're interested or indifferent when you're making applications for money. So, as you can see from the screen, I'm Andy Petch and I run the Angling Improvement Fund. But this is not purely about the Angling Improvement Fund. It is about a wider look at how you can develop opportunities for funding within your organisation. It's a look at the whole bigger picture. It's not just going to be a list of funds that you can apply for. So if you don't mind moving on for me, please, Alex. Okay, so here's a little about me. Obviously, you can see the bullet points there. And just to explain, this is really my opinion based on what I've done previously. So there's going to be the opposing views and other approaches to funding, but this is just from my experience is a successful one and comes with a very solid grounding. And you can pick from it the bits that you might think work for you and obviously leave the bits that don't. The reason I've been asked to do this tonight is because I've sat on a lot of grant awarding bodies, and I've also made a large number of successful funding bids. So I've sat on both sides of the table, effectively giving out money and applying for it, from different backgrounds, including local government. During the chat tonight, I may give the odd anecdotal evidence just to support some points, maybe some examples, but it's not going to be a list of look at how well I did, but they will be examples that I give that actually support what I'm saying, and you might be able to pick things out of the things that I did that might work for you. I've been involved in a number of clubs. I've seen ones that have succeeded and ones that have failed. And again, this is about expanding your potential, your organisation, so you can actually reach new funding streams outside of just the Angling Improvement Fund and the Fisheries Improvement Programme, which is the EA's fund that will be opening later this year, incidentally. That, of course, is a fairly limited avenue. Both of those have a limited amount of funds. Other funds that are available, other funding streams offer substantially more money. So obviously the AIF and the FIP, as they're called, are bespoke to anglers, and to that makes them a lot easier for you to apply to. But what I want to talk about is, one, how to give your best chance of applying just generally, but also how you might be able to access some of these other pots that are out there that you may not already be aware of. I could just ask my slide Gilly to move me on to the next slide, please. Okay, but here are my three main points that I think you need to do before you even consider moving forward with a funding plan. And the first of those, as it says at the top, point one, is to write a development plan for the club. The way I would go about doing this is get people to bring forward their ideas, whether it be at your committee or whatever forum you have. And again, if it is just a fishery that is not a club tuning in tonight, it will still be the same thing. You can still write your own development plan and ask for contributions from interested people. But if I refer to clubs generally, that's where I'm coming from. Once you prioritise what your plans are and agreed on them, I suggest approving it at an AGM. Take it to the AGM. So firstly, it gives validity to your plan because it can be approved. And secondly, if you've got something on the agenda that is slightly different to what's normally on the agenda, you're more likely to attract people. Say to people at this AGM, we are going to be discussing our development plan for the club. We've put this together. You could include it in the pre-paperwork that you send out with your ideas, and then ask for people to submit any ideas they've got in advance of the meeting. Then as your committee or your organisational structure, you can look at what comes in and put together a plan on the back of that. Now, I'm well aware that people are going to give you negative feedback and absurd ideas. You know, why aren't we putting sturgeon in the match lake and things like that? I know that is the sort of thing you get. But amongst the ideas that come in, and you will get some criticism, it's just what happens, and that can be discouraging. But within that, you will have people that come forward with good ideas that you might not have thought of. once it's decided on, and it shows the interested people, the anglers, whether they're members or whatever, that you have a plan. It shows people that you're not ignoring their issues and that you actually do have some form of strategy. So the first people you need to show is obviously your people that use your facilities. So put together a development plan. Secondly, in order to do that, you need to appoint a club development officer. Now, I talk at the forums quite often that Alex runs, and you get a lot of people attending. You'll always find that you've got a secretary, you've got a treasurer, but clubs so very rarely have a development officer, club development officer. I think it is a vital part for any club to have. If you go to your local cricket club or football club, they will almost certainly have a development officer. He will be a voting member of the committee. So it may be that your club needs to consider changing the rules. You might need to approve this at the AGM in order for it to become an officer's role. But it is whether they become an official officer or just a sitting member of your committee or your structure, it's vital that you have a development officer. And we're going to look into why and the things they can offer and how to work with that as we go through this evening. I've got a point 3 is appointing a person to write your applications. All the time it is the same person. So many places it is the same person doing everything. Now this has a double effect. One, they get fed up with it, understandably. I expect there's people on this call now who are that person. That's why you're here tonight. You're here because you're interested. You're probably a secretary. You do it all. You do the membership. You might even do the treasury as well. And now here I am saying you need a development plan and we need a club development officer. I get it's not realistic for one person to do that. And it's not realistic for them to be successful at it. So I can't accentuate enough about expanding the involvement of people in your club and appointing someone who is A, bespoke to do the role of the officer, and B, which is point 3, a person to complete the application forms. The application forms, when you're applying for money, are what you are judged on. They are whether you will get the money or not. So they are important. If you give them a little bit of time towards the end of the week when it's running out because you've done all the secretary stuff, you're fed up with the club anyway, you know, we've all been in these positions, I expect. You're not going to give your best on that form, and that will come across to the people who are judging it. So my recommendation is that you find someone that is good at completing forms to do that for you. Now, I know people will say, oh, we won't find anyone, there's no chance of doing it. But if I was to say to you now, if your club, say, had 500 members, if you asked all 500 through the right channels, there is someone in that club that will do it. There is someone. I mean, and to take that wider, if I walked up the high street now and I stopped 500 people and said, excuse me, I'm really stuck with this form, mad as it sounds, I'm not about to do it, someone would be polite and give you some tips and help you. It's just, so therefore within your club where you've got interested people, somebody out there might take the role on. You might find there's someone in there that used to work for the civil service that's used to filling out, basically has a job, or a retired person that is used to filling out forms. But it's vital that you get the person that is doing the form to be adept at doing it and comfortable doing it. And again, it's going to alleviate the work from all being on one person's shoulder. Now, getting involvement from club members is difficult. I know that. We all know that. People are reluctant to come forward. They are. They need a bit of cajoling. And to give an example, at the cricket club, we had some juniors and we started getting parental involvement. And to start with, it was the same situation, the same 3 or 4 people doing all the jobs. But once you could trigger some interest through parents and their children being involved, we recruited someone to be the safeguarding officer. Then we had someone to do the junior fixtures. Then we had a junior membership. And now I'm no longer involved in the cricket club. These people are now the committee and the chairs. They start to feel involved at some level. And then the word spreads to others who then want to get involved. takes the work off your plate, and it will make your funding applications better as we move forward. The communication structures, I will give Clubmate a little plug here, because whether it be Clubmate or another online structure for compiling your memberships, it does allow you the ability to send emails out to people, telling people we need someone to fill out this role. I think all too often people will say on the one letter a year that goes out, we will be having a work party the last Saturday in June. Please let us know if you can come. Now, ideally people would, but human nature is that they don't. You need to send them out an email saying, on this date, we are really in desperate need, or please, can you help us? We want to apply for this money. Do any of you have this skill? You will find people come forward. But the best way of doing that, I think, is through group emails. WhatsApp groups can work as well, but obviously they can also be very annoying through the number of messages. But some form of mass communication within your club is vital if you want to move this forward. You might find within your club people who you didn't know existed, who might want to, for example, sponsor a junior section or pay for a disabled peg. You don't know without asking. With my second example of this, I used to be a manager of a squash club, and that involved doing food for every team every time we had a league game. There was 5 teams, and a non-regular member just happened to say, "Oh, are you having a problem doing all the food?" I happen to own, and he owned a large bakery store on the high street that you've all heard of. He owned it, and he said, "I can do your sandwiches for you." Oh, really? And he ended up doing meals for every team. It was no problem to him. He said to me, I remember it now, he said, "Andy, I've got a lot of money. Doing a few sandwiches isn't a problem." And obviously you don't need sandwiches at the lake, but the aggro that took out of our club, never having to get someone to do the food. He did every match. I just gave him a list of the squash fixtures and he sent them all over. Obviously sandwiches wouldn't apply to a fishing club, as I say, but there may be people within your club that have got a building firm or are, skilled in working with desilting or putting up structures or car parks, fencing. You'd be surprised what skills you've got within your club, but you do have to ask. So if you can move it on, please, Alex. Okay, so what I've drawn up here is my example, and it's just stuff I've made up. Obviously, they're just examples I've made up off the top of my head. They're not live, they're not real, even though you might recognize some of the lakes on the left-hand side that I've used. So this is not the specific development plan, because that will have a wider detail in it. Like, for example, we want to get another 50 juniors, or we want to improve the facilities generally. This is a plan of the projects that you've put together at your meeting or your committee meeting, or as your organization, whatever structure that has. This is a plan of what you think are your priorities. So I've prioritized on the right hand side an order of how important they are to the club. You may have a different order depending on what your needs are, but the first thing to do is make a list. Make a list of everything that you need done at the club, and it might be something small, like at the top, replacing the life buoys, which are costed. And again, it might be something huge, like at the bottom, installing an otter fence. Large cost, big cost differential. It doesn't matter whether the otter fence is priority 1 or 2. That will be something your club will decide. But once you've got that in place, you effectively have a package of ideas that you can then shape to fit funding opportunities when they become available. In advance, you can get them costed. Again, I've got a one of the columns is a table with the costings that I've just picked out. Where I've put benefits, which is the 4th column, what I've done there is I've explained the benefits. So let's take a look at the second one down, install fish refuge and habitat areas at Sunoak Pond. So on the face of it, why are we putting fish refuges in? Because we want to protect our fish stocks. Yeah, we know that. That doesn't leave you very open beyond the AIF or the FIP for funding options. So you need to now start thinking, what else are the benefits of that? Even if you have to be a little bit liberal with your examples. Again, I mean, you'll read through them. Improving the habitat visually and environmentally. Increasing bird, invertebrate and natural plant life. See, these are things that now move you into an environment type funding stream. An educational tool for junior members and visiting groups. It might be a bit of an exaggeration, but it's something you could do. You could invite the local scout group down to see you installing it or to learn about invertebrates. Once you start building communications with other clubs, even if it doesn't happen, it gives you a much stronger platform when you move forward to other funders. Again, reducing silt build-up and erosion of the bank by the footpath. What I've done there is I've brought safety into it. Erosion of the bank by the footpath, people could fall in, especially if you're in, for example, a park lake. And again, I've got here potentially installed by local community payback or volunteers. If you're able to recruit some sort of volunteer involvement, that might be your own club members itself. Again, it fits certain categories. There are funds out there specifically for voluntary groups and to assist people volunteering. Okay, Alex, can you move me on, please? Okay, so here are things that you can do now. At this specific point in time, if you have a project that you want for your organisation, there's no fund open for it, you don't know where you get the money, you can still do these things, and it's important that you do. The funds may not be open, but you need the information in advance. It will make your life a lot easier. And these are things that people fall down on time and time again. So starting the first column, looking at costings. You can get your quotes together. Okay, costings might go up by the time a fund opens or by the time you find one, but you've got a rough idea, and it will give you an idea, and it cuts down on the work once the fund actually opens. Match funding, start recording what match funding you might be able to gain for the club. And I'm going to cover that a little bit later in terms of voluntary effort. Get your bank statements together. I've seen so many applications where people haven't submitted the bank statement because they haven't been able to get it because the treasurer's on holiday and they've only got a week to get it in. You can start getting some of this stuff together in advance. The biggest column is this permissions column. So the landowner consent. If you've got a plan that requires your landowner to give consent, get him to give you some written consent now. So it doesn't matter if it's in 3 years' time that you apply or you actually do the project. If you've got written consent, it's there. You just explain what project is, ask the landowner, are they happy with it? It might be local council, it might be wherever it is you rent your lake from. Again, the flood risk permissions, Natural England, Historic England, these particularly Natural England, Historic England, they're not the easiest people to get hold of. If you're trying to get hold of them in the 3 weeks that you've got to get the form in, you're already up against it. So speak to them in advance. And again, when you add that to your application, we already have landowner consent. We've spoken with Natural England. It's strengthening your application and it's reducing your workload when you get to those vital 4 weeks when you've got to put the form in, 4, 6, whatever the case may be. Policies on the right. You will need a risk assessment for a lot of your projects. So write one, have a template, something you can work off. In the Angling Improvement Fund, we quite often have people who struggle with risk assessments, but it's the first time they've looked at it. They've not considered it until they're applying for money. So if you need a safeguarding policy, that would apply for things that Graham's going to speak about shortly. Start writing one of them. Insurance, I'm not telling you to get your insurance out now, but you could get a rough cost of what it's going to be to do the work that's involved. Just generally get your paperwork lined up behind you so that when the application's open, things are a lot easier. Now, if you can move it on, please, Al. Okay, so what we have here is a list of initiatives to help improve your bids. I'm going to ask Graham maybe to talk about them. He's the Regional Development Officer for the South East. And we're not going to go into too much detail about them. It's just a way of jolting some ideas of things that you can do that might support your applications. So, Graham, I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Andy, and good evening, everyone. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay and see me and see the slides. So yeah, as Andy said, my name's Graham Maybe and I'm the Regional Development Officer for the South East. So my role is mainly based in participation, but I do get the opportunity to go around and meet with lots of clubs, coaches, fisheries, and talk to them about how they're going to develop their organisations moving forward. So I'm just going to work my way down the list here. And as Andy said, it's all based around initiatives within inside the AT that you can use within inside your club or your coaching structure to actually add kudos to the bids that you're putting in and to add weight, basically. I think that's a good way of saying it, is to add weight and give it a bit of oomph of what you're doing. Now, a lot of things that you already do with inside your organisation and your club can be, I'll use the word branded up, but can be associated with lots of our campaigns that are running at the moment with inside the Angling Trust. And what that does is it actually, when you're submitting a bid, it shows that you are following best practice, that you're current and relevant with what's going on, not just in your region, but nationally, led by your governing body, and that you are behind and supporting these initiatives that are national initiatives and being rolled out on a large scale. So, for an example of that, participation. You know, as I said before, I'm sitting inside the participation team, but we've got a national program called the Get Fishing Project, and in particular the Get Fishing Awards. Now, these awards, I've got my little certificate here. There we go. Got a lovely certificates here. It's funded by the Environment Agency, and if your club runs open days, a lot of clubs run open days during the summer. What you can do is you can actually sort of badge up those open days and bring them and onboard them with the Get Fishing program. Share the success stories with inside the Angling Trust social media, on our blogs. We can, sometimes we can do video footage, social media footage, and really add weight and get behind and support what you are doing as a club. Now, as I say, what that does is it adds kudos, it adds weight, it shows you're following best practice, that you're engaged in these national programs. And I've been involved in a lot of bid writing in the past as well through the organisations I used to run in the past. And those type of initiatives, when people are sitting down and looking at a funding application, they do really like to see that. And I think on the slide here, you can see some of the sort of logos of the campaigns, and I'll go through a few of those as well. So moving down, we've got coaching, level 1 and level 2 coaches. Obviously, if you've got participation programs running and they're being led by level 1 and level 2 coaches, that is, you know, really looked upon by funders to be best practice, and it should be. So funders looking at that application, rather than just being, oh, we've got a have a go session, you can badge it up as being, we've got a Get Fishing project, which is a national project being run by qualified and licensed level 1 and level 2 coaches, part of this national program. Sits really nicely inside a funding bid. And then moving on from that, you can then say, and in order to increase the participation numbers, we need to apply for funding to put in extra swims, extra car parking, etc., to meet the demand of our participation projects. But like I say, you'll be referring them to, rather than just your own participation projects, which you'll have the numbers for, they'll also be able to refer against the national project as well to see what's going on nationally and how big that project is. Moving down, the well-being side of things. We all know that fishing is great for our mental health and well-being, and there's a big drive at the moment, a big push with inside angling for this. At the Angling Trust, we do have our campaign, which is Get Fishing for Wellbeing. And you can actually, as a club or a coach, you can sign up, just go through a very simple checklist and become an approved provider for Get Fishing for Wellbeing programs. It's on the website. I'd be happy to send a link out after this. I'm sure Andy and Alex will be sending out some details at the end of this, so we can include the links to all of these on that email. But again, rather than just writing a bid and saying, we want to improve our platforms per se, so that we can have more people coming down because we've heard it's good for people's well-being and they enjoy being next to the water. That is true, but if you can write it and link it in with the NGB's program, national initiative of the Get Fishing for Wellbeing program, it does give a lot more weight to the funding bid that you're putting down. The fourth one here, very easy one to get involved with. Litter, anglers against litter. How many of you on this call tonight organise work parties and litter picks? I would have thought pretty much everyone that's on this call will have that going on with inside their clubs. Now, again, badging it up as the Anglers Against Litter campaign is a big national campaign which we're running. You can see there on the slide, you know, it's got Environment Agency, Shimano backing, big national campaign. Funders would love to see that sitting on a funding bid, that's the type of work that you're doing and the initiative that you're behind. Again, it shows that you're current, you know what's going on in the sport, and you really are driving for a better environment for people to fish and go and visit. So, and I know the slides that are coming, so I don't want to put a spoiler in there, but I know Andy's going to talk about that, about how to use these logos when you put bids together a little bit later. And then just moving on, I'll sort of quickly whiz through these ones here, but engagement with the Building Bridges team. Again, the guys with inside the Building Bridges team there do fantastic work. It shows that you are thinking about the whole community rather than just English speaking or people that are local to you and English speaking. So if you can involve the Building Bridges scheme, that's fantastic. And the same with enforcement, voluntary bailiff scheme. Now, if you can put these into your bid to say that you have got you've got bailiffs that are involved in the voluntary bailiff scheme, the VBS scheme, and refer them to that, and also that they have done their Building Bridges training, then obviously when a funder sits down, you're not just mentioning water bailiffs, which they might not know what they do. You can refer them to these two national programs and they can really get a good understanding of that. Moving on just to the last two, inclusivity. That is really important when it comes to writing funding bids. Funders will want to see that your funding bid offers inclusivity. You're not just aiming towards one target audience, you are actually doing this for the benefit of the whole community. Now, there's a campaign which we're running at the moment, which is the We Fish as One campaign. It's a wonderful campaign, which is making sure that fishing is available to everyone within inside the community, regardless of age, race, sex, social backgrounds, all those types of things there. So again, use this We Fish as One campaign, sign up to it, get your AGM to be aware, your club at the AGM to be aware of this, promote it through your club, make sure it becomes an ethos of your club, and then it can go into the funding bids. Don't just use it as we're going to use these words in a funding bid. It needs to be part of the institution of your club. You need to make sure that your club is behind this and fully backing it. But once it is, it does add a lot of weight into your funding bid. And again, we will send out links to all of these at the end of the meeting. I'll make sure these go through. And the environment. I know that Andy mentioned in one of the previous slides there that the environment, you know, that's important, and it is. We all know how important our natural environment is for us as anglers. That's one of the main reasons we go fishing, is to sit in these beautiful environments and challenge ourselves with trying to catch fish. But signing up to things like the lime recycling scheme, the National Lime Recycling Scheme, and also the new water testing, water monitoring program, which we've got running through the Angling Trust. It shows again that you're current and you are helping to improve the environment through your club or your fishery or your coaching organisation. It shows that you have got a clear focus and you are, you do have a drive to improve the environment. And again, these are national campaigns which are being run all over the country. And it's not just a case of saying that, oh, well, as bailiffs, we go and test our water for the dissolved oxygen content every 2 months. You're actually showing you're part of a national campaign, which is really trying to get a really good insight into the water quality, not just of your water, but comparing it to waters nationwide. So that's just me going through the list there. The final one there is use branded logos. Now, once you've got these campaigns and you buy into these as your club, you have these inside your club, They're up and running. The committee has, signed up to them and said, yes, we're going to involve this inside our club, which I'll be honest, isn't that much work, guys. It's not a huge amount of work. I know that looking at this here and hearing me talking about it, you may think, oh, that's a lot of work. But it's not actually, because you do a lot of it already. It's just turning your, just changing the way that you look at the work that you do to make sure that you're buying in and fitting into these campaigns, and then promoting those campaigns through your club, getting in touch with the Angling Trust, getting in touch with the offices that run these within inside the AT, and joining up with these campaigns and these schemes. And then once you're obviously joined up to the campaigns and schemes, you can then use the logos. The logos can go around your website. So if funders are looking at your website, they can clearly see that. They can go out on any letters which you're sending out as well to say that this is what you sign up to. And you can use them in blogs, social media posts, et cetera, et cetera. And that is a very good point, is that when it comes to doing your social media posts, use these national campaigns inside those social media posts as well. Because if you're hashtagging in, for example, anglers against litter, if you're hashtagging that, it's going to get picked up, it can get shared, it can be seen by your club members that you are doing these work parties and part of the Anglers Against Litter campaign, which makes them more aware of it. And what you will find, just like Andy said before, is things will build and build and grow and grow. And and it'll become easier to get volunteers involved if they know they're actually behind a purpose, if that makes sense. Right, people, I'll stop waffling on now. I can't see Andy's face on the screen, so I don't know if you're still there, Andy, but I hope that's been some help. And I'm going to pass back over to Andy now. By all means, anyone that's on this call, if you do have any questions regarding any participation, if you'd like to get any participation projects running at your club, your fishery, or if you're a coach and you want some help and support in putting some together for next year, or if there's any of these points here that you'd like to have a chat with me about, please feel free to get in touch with me. I cover the whole of the southeast of England, so from Hampshire up to above London, all the way over into Kent, obviously down onto the south coast. So if you're in that region there, which I think a lot of you will be, then please do get in touch, and my details will be passed around at the end of this meeting.
Thanks a lot, Graham. If you don't mind moving me on to the next one, please, Alex. So Graham mentioned there, this isn't about making your life harder. The goal of this is about making things easier in the long term. And that's obviously the title of this slide, making your life easier. So if you have a particular project, which we've already looked at previously, that you've got listed in your list of projects and you prioritize, your summary of it, no matter what form that you're putting it into, needs to be generic. Then you've only got to write it once, and you can cut and paste it from one form to the next. So just reading that slide there, which would be easier if I didn't have my picture in front of it on the, there we go, out the way. So we plan to install a bespoke fence to prevent otters from gaining access to our fishing lake and eating our highly valuable fish, many of which are worth over £2,000. Rather than, we plan to install an otter fence at our main carp water. Now, the latter of the two is fine if you're applying to the AIF, because we understand what that means. But if you're applying to a different type of funder that is not angling based, you need to put that extra detail in. So if you do it for, it would work for both funds. So once it's written, you can save and copy and paste it. I mean, an otter fence, to someone that knows nothing about angling, they might think, oh, nice, you're storing otters. These people sitting on panels do not assume they know what you're saying. So write it once, but write it well so that you can constantly transfer it over. On that point, I would expand as well. So applying for an otter, money for an otter fence to stop your fish being eaten because they're worth money, okay, that's got merit. But in that, I would then go on to explain, if these people specifically go to catch these valuable fish that have been in this lake for X number of years, if they were to die, they will no longer go. And many of these people that attend this fishery to fish for these fish, it's their only form of getting outside. It's the only thing they do. A lot of people, the only outside exercise they do is going fishing. You'll find that there is an aging population of people that go fishing, and that is their health and well-being. It's going out. So now, instead of it's a fence to protect our stock, it's become a fence that is helping the health and well-being of our members, and it is vital and their only form of exercise. Start your applications early. I mean, this is all about straightforward stuff, and you're probably thinking, yeah, we know that. Nobody ever does. Even after the closing date. So if it's, you keep an eye on when they're open and get started on them. Now, people put these things off. I know what it's like filling out forms. You think, oh, I can't be bothered. You know, how can I get out doing it? Can I get someone else to do it? It's normally the thought. But if you've already got them written, as I've said here, your generic transferable summary, you're sitting, transferring and cutting and pasting into the various boxes for each application form. So you haven't got to think again. Once it's written, it's written. Don't undersell yourself. Now, you will be at this, where I expanded there on the otter fence, turning it into a health and wellbeing project. Don't feel, firstly, it's true. And secondly, don't feel like you're stretching the truth. You're not, because other applications will be doing exactly the same thing. They will be stretching their applications for whatever their funding requirements are. And it is a competition. You are competing against other people. There's only a set amount of money to go around. You need to give your best possible widest spectrum that you can on your application. Having said that, don't take rejection personally. You're not guaranteed to get it. Quite often I've found in my time granting funds, people would get the knock if they didn't get the money, and they'd be like, it was a complete waste of time, I'm not doing that again. And I get it, it's disappointing, you put effort into doing it, but ultimately they have got to pick someone for the money, and if it isn't you, accept that. Ask why you failed. Because if the fund is open again next year, if they've told you why you failed, you're already 2 or 3 steps up the ladder. So because you can then adjust those things in your application for next year. Be persistent, reapply, apply to lots of different funds. You might find the one that you think really suits you and you've got a good chance of is the one that you don't get the money of. And the one you thought you had no hope of is the one you get the money from. Have the next slide, please. Again, following on the making your life easy, looking beyond the points, the first bullet point we have discussed with Graham previously. It's about letting people know what the wider picture of your club is. But I've also put a couple of others in there about your large memberships. People often don't realise that your club may well be the largest, or your organisation, whatever it is, the largest footfall or the largest organisation in the area by quite some way. So I was speaking at a forum recently and they said they had a few thousand members, and like I would have thought the local football club won't have 300. If you're lucky, the juniors might, the adults might have 35, but they get good grants of money for clubhouses, for drainage. And to bring it back to the otter fence example, if the otters die because you haven't got a fence, you haven't got your fishing and your well-being, etc., that is no different to if the council doesn't sort out the drainage at XYZ football or rugby pitch, they haven't got a club, they can't play there anymore. They spend big funds on these sort of things. It's just making it known the importance of your club, so don't undersell yourself. Big one is ensure the figures in the budget add up. It is massive. It is so often not the case. People will apply to the AIF fund, which is a maximum of £5,000, and they'll apply for 13,000. So to that end, it is absolutely vital that you read the guidance. You will get a guidance note with majority of applications or funds that you're going for. Read it twice, read it in full. We have people apply for things that are not even remotely relevant to predation, to the predation fund. Like you immediately know this, well, firstly, you can't grant it, and secondly, they clearly haven't read it. And the things that you write in it, remember, it may be obvious to you, but it's not obvious to the people reading it. Some of the discussions I've had over the years of people going, well, it's obvious, isn't it? It's obvious what it's for. It's not obvious. Don't assume it's obvious to anyone what it's for. Including the documentation that the funder has asked for is another one that people miss out quite often. It will say, complete this questionnaire and submit it, or submit your bank documents, or submit your proof of landowner has allowed you, or planning permission or whatever. So if you haven't bothered submitting yours, oh, I couldn't do it, I couldn't upload it, other people will have done. So when you are the admin or the judges looking at it, who looks more organized to you? The person that's actually read the guidance and uploaded all the documents they've asked for, or the person who hasn't? And quite often you'll be scored on whether you've included the documentation. So you might, if you can't be bothered, you might lose points through not doing it. It's not just a case of that you might not look as good. Spelling mistakes, abbreviations and jargons, I said at the bottom, again, it just gives an impression. It says to the funder, you can have confidence in me. So if you do struggle with that sort of thing, ask for help. Do ask for help. And again, that comes back to being prepared and writing it in advance so that you've got time to proofread whatever it is that you're submitting. When I said don't undersell yourself, I recommend documenting the hours of input that you get from volunteers and materials. So just as an example, if you've got a guy that's a tree surgeon and he drops off a lorry load of chippings at your lake on his way home 3 or 4 times for a job that you use to pad out your swims or on the footpaths, remember that, write it down. A bag of chippings, I know, is 100 quid, 2 bags, a couple of 100 quid. He does it for 5 days, there's £1,000. So keep a record of it, and the hours involved that you do, keep a record of it. So again, when you are not underselling yourself, you are saying, as a club, we have had this input from our members, which you can list X, Y, Z, amounting to this amount of money. And we've had these hours, voluntary hours. All clubs are volunteers. There's so few paid people within clubs and organisations like ours. We need to get that message out there because other organisations do. Okay, can I have the next slide, please, Alex? Now, here I have written a dummy letter, which I shall read to you. If you could zoom in, my eyes aren't that good. And as you can see at the top, we've put some of the logos on. So it's just a bit of a rough example. Dear Councillor Johnson, firstly, may I congratulate you for success at the recent elections. Clearly, you're doing something right to have served the community for over a decade. I too have been in my post as Secretary of Welton and District Anglers for over a decade, and I'm sure you can empathise that sometimes it feels like a life sentence. However, the feeling of making a difference far outweighs the challenges. We're holding an open day on May the 15th at Furnace Pond. This is our fishery on Mill Farm Lane, NW3 6PL, opposite the entrance to the Nature Reserve. It's one of the 6 that the club leases and looks after for our 235 members. In recent years, our membership has fallen, and this includes the number of juniors who are joining. The attraction of computer games is strong, and there are so many other options available to young people now. Therefore, we've put together a 5-year development plan with the aim of doubling this number. The Open Day is just one event we have planned to attract local families to learn more about our club. There'll be a treasure hunt for younger children and plenty of food, tea and cold drinks for hungry parents. The club was hoping that you might be available on the day to present our prizes and perhaps say a few words about the importance of being outdoors and the well-being benefits it can offer young and old alike. You'd be most welcome to invite your family along too and have a go at fishing at what is our most popular water. I noticed that it links in well with the council's Get Outdoors campaign that I have seen advertised in the local press and may provide an excellent photo opportunity should you want to have some taken. If not, we'd love you to come down on another day to see what we are doing in the community. That's hard to read, but please bring a sturdy pair of boots as there are a few areas on the bank that need considerable repair and renewal. We're working on ways to raise funds in order to rectify this as part of our 5-year plan. I'd also gladly attend a council meeting to give a short presentation about the club and to learn ways that we can become more involved with the town's community and perhaps access the local schools to promote awareness of the benefits angling can offer. We think we have a great story to tell about enjoying nature and how angling can deliver that in ways most would never think of, giving people a lifelong, healthy, nature-filled hobby with no age barrier. I will call you in a week or so to give you more details, or please feel free to contact me before then if convenient with the details given below. And then it signs off and gives clear contact details. If you can zoom out of that. I'm talking about with this letter, obviously that's a bit of a general example of the kind of thing that you might send, the kind of thing that you're trying to get across to people. You've got the logos there, you've got really clear contact details. It's written in a friendly manner. It's not just saying what money is available, we're looking for money for our fund. It's inviting them down to find out about the club. And yeah, it is mentioned within there that you're looking for some funding, but you're not, funders are often, particularly in terms of councils, being hounded by people from all corners of just saying, can we have money? Can we have money? You're not doing that. You're inviting them and giving them an opportunity to come find out what the club's about. Once you're engaged with them, then you can start mentioning what you're thinking. And again, it's mentioning that you've got the development plan, you're showing that you've got a proper structure and a plan. Okay, if you can move on, please. Okay, I won't need to read this one out. It's a bit more readable and shorter, thankfully. This is the kind of thing that people will regularly send. It's very limited, just basically asking for money. So again, I'd ask you, which one would you be more likely to fund? Which one, if you were a funder and it was your money or you were responsible for that money, which one would you be more likely to engage with? Again, it doesn't give clear information. It doesn't give on the left-hand side. It doesn't really sell the organisation, and therefore that doesn't inspire confidence in them to spend money with you. To give you another third example, there was an amenity association involved when I was on the council, and they were at everything. Nothing happened in the constituency without the amenity association having a table set up, handing out leaflets, or being there. And they were granted lots of money, not as a direct result, but they were there. They were at the front. They were in. People knew who they were. So if you can get yourself a bit more known with these funding streams, whether it be with the council or otherwise, show people what you're doing. When funding becomes available, who's going to be at the front of their head? Oh, I know. Oh, this might suit. They might even come to you and tell you, have you heard about this fund? I know you were looking for something for this on your development plan. This fund might suit it. Suddenly they'll start, you might find that people do a little bit of the work for you. It does take some legwork, a little bit of groveling, I suppose, probably the wrong word, but just showing people what your club has to offer rather than just asking for money. And I regularly get phone calls where people will say, I'm just asking what money's about. And I said, what for? Well, just really seeing what funding's out there. So they don't know what it's for, what they're asking for. They're just literally ringing up and asking for money. That is not a successful strategy. I just hope that there isn't anyone called Bert Jenkinson on this call, because that is a made-up name. It's along with the address as well. You can move on, please, Alex. Okay, moving this on. I suggest everybody thinks like you are judging your own application before you submit it. You need to make it hard for them to say no. If you give them any reasons to say no, they will, because remember, as I said before, there's going to be more applications than money. So if you haven't included the attachments that they asked you to attach, they can already say no to you. That's the beauty of when they know you personally, such as the invite to the letter to the open day, the letter to the open day. It's much harder to refuse a person you know than it is to refuse a document on a screen or a letter, whatever the case may be. So personalizing your relationship with the funder where possible. I know it's not possible in all circumstances, but it is hugely advantageous. So making it hard for them to say no by completing it properly. And another suggestion I would give is to ask a non-angler to read through it before you submit it. So if you've got a neighbour, whoever it may be, someone, your wife, whatever, ask them to fill it to read it through, because there will be things in there that you haven't thought of. So you might be asking for something to do with, say, match fishing. So what's match fishing? I've heard. Imagine the funder. I've heard of salmon fishing. I don't know what match fishing is. What's that for? So that would be regular competitive angling, rather than the term match fishing. So removing any phrases within your applications that is even remotely possibly confusable. Having projects that are oven ready, I've got there as my second bullet point. making sure they're deliverable. If they are ready to go, it might be frustrating for you that you haven't got the money, but if you've done all the work that I've listed previously, you've already got the quotes, you've got the things in place, and you then go to a funder, quite often they say, when could you, if we gave you the money, when could you do it? Well, now you've got everything in place. Yeah. That is so huge for funders, showing them that you're prepared, giving them confidence, and the fact that you've got everything in place ready to go. Again, it will take you another rung up the ladder towards success. You're giving them confidence you can do it. Selling the wider benefit of your project, we've already touched on. Being organised in advance, absolutely vital. And there are instances when things are even undersubscribed. So I've seen it a number of occasions when I was involved in funding through the local council, where people didn't know about the funds. They're not widely known about, other than the people that get involved, like I mentioned earlier. So where they are undersubscribed, you will find they will come looking for projects because they need to spend the money, usually as it approaches March. Now, if they know you exist, they know you've got a plan, and they know about your project because you've invited them and you've told them about it, you could get we're looking for people to apply to this project. It does happen. Seen it happen more than once. So it's another advantage of making sure your club's out there. If you can move on, please, Alex. Okay, so I'm pleased to hear. This is in my opinion, this is the last slide. In my opinion, the key to success is to make your application fit their criteria. Your project, I can't actually see that. Your project fit their criteria. Not wait for a funding stream that matches your project, as you could be waiting for a very long time. So often a fund will open and people will look at it and they'll say essential, and they'll go, oh, we haven't got that, can't apply. But the successful fundee applicants who do this regularly will read the essential criteria and go, okay, how can we match that? And there will be some cases where you can't, but there'll be an awful lot that you don't realise that you can, especially on the health and wellbeing and environment, because they are, having done some Googling as research for doing this presentation tonight, they are areas where there is a lot of money, where there is money available, as is increasing diverse communities in participation in sports. And that's one of the things that Graham mentioned earlier. Last thing I will say is that I have written a blog for Lines on the Water, where I specifically talk about council funding in particular and an approach to council funding. And it goes hand in hand with this presentation. It's worth taking a look at that. So thank you very much for those of you that have been listening tonight. Hopefully that makes some semblance of sense. If it doesn't, you can obviously still contact me through my email address or phone number through the Angling Trust, and I'll be happy to talk to you or give you suggestions. Maybe have a look at possible funding streams in your area. I'm also happy to talk to clubs or organisations, come and see your committees and have a chat about things. I could bring a development officer like Graham or whoever your local one is, if that's helpful. So again, thank you very much for listening, and back to Alex.